Howdy, my name is John, and this video is a November 2020 wrap-up and a December 2020 TBR. I had a really great reading month for November. The first book I finished was The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This book has gotten a lot of buzz on BookTube, and I think because of all the buzz it got, I was a little disappointed with it. The action scenes in this are very well written. However, I did not find the world building of this novel to be on the same level. This is kind of a midway between a 3-star and a 4-star for me, so I went ahead and gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. The next book I finished was Prelude to Foundation by Issac Asimov. This novel takes place before the events of the original Foundation trilogy, and it also ties the Foundation trilogy to the Robots series of novels. And I had originally intended to kind of read just the Foundation novels, but this novel made me realize I really needed to go back and start at kind of the beginning. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when I get to December TBR. This book I really enjoyed. I nearly gave it 5 stars. However, I wound up with only a 4-star rating just because there were a couple of little things in here that bothered me, but it's a very well written, very enjoyable novel. The next book I finished was Tyrant's Throne by Sebastian De Castell. Again, this is another 4-star novel. It's the last one in the Greatcoats series, and I really enjoyed it. Again, it's a 4-star novel because there are a couple of things that bothered me in this, just enough to knock it down from a 5-star. The next book I finished was War of the Twins by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. This is the second book in the Dragonlance Legends trilogy. I really enjoyed this one. The characters in this are really well written. The action isn't that great, but at the end of the day, I wound up giving this one 5 stars. I've really enjoyed reading this one. The next book I finished this month is Blue Adept by Piers. This is the second book in the Apprentice Adept series. I really enjoyed this one as well. This was another 5-star novel. I think this is Anthony in his prime. And while I did have a couple minor issues with it, I thoroughly enjoyed this novel. The next book I finished was A Painted House by John Grisham. This story follows a 7-year-old boy on an Arkansas cotton farm, and it describes really about a couple of months, September and October of 1952. Now, this story really resonated with me because my mom and her siblings grew up on a cotton farm. Now, granted, this is set in Arkansas, and my mom grew up in North Carolina, but there's a lot of similarities in the stories between what my mom and her siblings have told me and what this book tells me. This book is a perfect illustration of why I want to read fiction that is neither science fiction nor fantasy. I really enjoyed this story. It had me laughing out loud several times. Again, because I have this personal connection to it, I wound up giving it 5 stars. The pace of this novel is fairly slow, so it may be too slow for some readers, and some readers will have trouble connecting to the characters, but for me, I loved it. The last book I finished was Koop, the Memoirs of America's Family Doctor. This was written by C. Everitt Koop himself. During the Reagan administration, Koop was the Surgeon General. And I actually learned a couple of things by reading this novel. I always thought that the Surgeon General had come from one of the armed forces. It turns out that there is a uniformed medical service, and that Koop actually spent his career in a civilian setting and then was promoted into the Surgeon General position. Dr. Koop was actually one of the pioneers of pediatric surgery. And this book, half of it kind of follows his life story from the time he's a boy until the time that he does become Surgeon General. The other half of the book deals with the health problems that he dealt with while he was Surgeon General. So you have a chapter each on smoking, AIDS, the rights of infants with disabilities, and then one on abortion. And then finally, there's an epilogue that deals with other health issues that don't warrant a full chapter. I grew up during the Reagan administration, so I remember when C. Everitt Koop was the Surgeon General. And just to kind of give you an indication of the impact that he had, when I was in junior high school, I can remember the high school where I would attend had a spot where students could smoke outside. By the time that I got to high school, that spot was gone, and that's largely due to the efforts of Dr. Koop in order to warn everybody about the dangers of smoking. Again, the 80s was the period where AIDS first came on the scene. And back when it did, if you got AIDS, it pretty much was a death sentence. And the book kind of, talks about how he dealt with the problem early on and the challenges that he faced dealing with the AIDS problem. Again, because I can remember this time period that he's talking about, I really enjoyed this novel. If you're my age or older, again, I think you'll enjoy it. If you're interested in pediatric surgery or learning more about the history of the topics that he covered, I think this is well worth reading, even though this book now is over 30 years old. I've got two books that I'm in the middle of. The first one is Test of the Twins by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. This is the third and final book in the Dragonlance Legends trilogy. I'm actually not enjoying this one all that much thus far. I'm, maybe about a third into it, and it just seems to be a whole lot of setup at this point, but hopefully it will pick up as the novel progresses. The other book that I'm in the middle of is American Gothic Short Stories. I actually started this back in October as a part of a Halloween read. I've read a few more of the stories in this book, but I'm really hoping that in December that I can finish this book up. I'm about halfway done. Naturally, those two books that I just mentioned are part of my December TBR. Next on my December TBR, I have Juxtaposition. This is the third novel in the Apprentice Adept series, and it actually closed out the original trilogy. There are 4 books after this one. The first 2 books and this book make a complete story. The 4 books that follow are a separate story in the same world. So this book fills my one Piers Anthony book a month. The next book I'm planning on reading is Sinlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. I've heard a lot about this book on the Library of Alexandria's channel. I'm looking forward to reading this and seeing if I enjoy it as much as Alan does. This book fills my modern science fiction and fantasy category. My classic science fiction or fantasy series is a read-through of the works of Isaac Asimov. Last month, I'd really only intended on reading the Foundation novels, but after reading Prelude to Foundation, I realized that I really needed to go back and start with the Robot series, because here again, these novels take place over many centuries, and Preludes to Foundation tie the Robot series to the Foundation series. This month, for my classic science fiction or fantasy, I'm going to be reading the Robot short stories, and they're spread over a number of different books. The first book I'm going to read is I, Robot. This is the only book in the set that I'm about to show you that I intend to read cover to cover. It's basically a series of short stories that are kind of tied together with text that goes between each short story. This book is called The Complete Robot. It includes all of the stories that are in iRobot, but not the text that connects the stories. And then it also contains most of the rest of the short stories about robots that Asimov wrote. There are 3 more books that Asimov wrote that contain at least one short story about robots. The first one is Robot Visions. The short story in here is also called Robot Visions. There's also a collection of essays about robots in this book as well. I'm pretty sure the rest of the novel is a repeat of the short stories that are in The Complete Robot. This book is Robot Dreams by Issac Asimov, and I think the only story that is not in the other collections is the title story. This book is titled Gold, and it contains, I think, 2 short stories, some more short stories that have been reprinted, and this also includes a set of essays about science fiction and about writing. The collection of essays in these books I'm going to count toward my nonfiction category of books. The one category I'm going to leave open for the month is the channel Readalong. In that prompt, I pick another booktuber and I read a book that they're reading. In January, I'm planning on filling this prompt with The Black Company, and that will be over on Slowly Red's channel. I did not mention this earlier, but Test of the Twins is a category that I am buddy reading with a friend of mine. We're reading a chapter a day and then discussing the book. The book for American Gothic short stories, I'm technically fitting this one in the non-science fiction and fantasy category because a lot of the stories don't include the supernatural or a science fiction element. Of course, some of them do, so it's a little bit of a squeeze, but I actually kind of want to keep December light. Just, it's the holidays, and I want to make sure that I have time to get through the books that I have and, have enough time to enjoy the holidays. And especially given that I'm not sure how much of the Issac Asimov books that I'm going to have to read. After I'd filmed my wrap-up and TBR video, Tom from Tom LA Books announced that he was going to start a series on the Divine Comedy. His plan is to do a video for each of the 100 cantos. The Divine Comedy has been a book that has always intimidated me. I read portions of it in high school, and I bought a copy of it years ago and just have not ever gotten around to reading it. And I figured now would be a good time to join in. He's planning on doing a video or 2 a week. Leave a link in the description to his announcement video. If you're new to my channel, I periodically do flower updates. My mom really loved flowers, and I've been taking care of them since she got sick. I should have included this update in October. One day I noticed monarch butterflies flying in and around the flowers. I couldn't get too close to take close-up pictures, but I did get these 2 pictures. The next 2 pictures are from the middle of November. This is up against the south wall of the house, so it stays fairly warm and gets a lot of sun. And I had a rose and then some petunias that were still blooming. If this is the last video of mine that you watch this year, I hope you have a very happy holidays. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.